Good morning. It is quite a morning. Nikki Maduro has the day off, and I'm Kim McAllister in for Nikki today. Thank you for being here on this second morning of the time change of the Nikki Maduro show, starting at 9, a couple minutes after 9 this morning, going to 11, and then Mark Thompson's show from 11 to 1, and then, of course, the after party from 1 to 2. So here we are, and what a day it is with the indictments that came down yesterday, just moments after the after party ended. Whew, this is a big thing. And I want to talk about that with you, get your opinions on all of it. But the way we're doing the morning show is we're giving you a little dose of news before we really get into anything else. So let us start with the news and get you all caught up before we launch into our discussion. How about that?
Now, from around the world to up your street, the Nikki Maduro Show presents News Czar Kim McAllister.
Oh, yes. Former President Trump scheduled to be arraigned tomorrow on 4 counts related to his alleged efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The indictment claims Trump was determined to remain in power, despite being aware that he lost the election. In announcing the indictment yesterday, the special counsel, Jack Smith, said his office is ready to have all of the evidence tested in a court of law. Gas prices continue to climb higher. AAA reporting the national average for a gallon of regular, $3.80 a gallon. That's 2 cents higher than it was yesterday, 12 cents higher than last Wednesday, and 27 cents higher than it was just a month ago. Millions of Americans remain under heat alerts across the South. In New Orleans, the heat index reached 109 Tuesday. In Corpus Christi, Texas, 112. In Phoenix, where it's been the hottest stretch of days on record, temperatures are again expected to be above 110 by the end of the week. Private employers in the United States hired 324,000 workers last month, greatly exceeding market expectations of 189,000. According to the latest ADP report out today, most of those jobs were in the service industry, led by leisure and hospitality. Mining and construction jobs also saw a jump as well. And striking writers and Hollywood studios will start talking again this week. Finally, a little movement here. The Writers Union, the Writers Guild of America, confirming last night it will resume talks with the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers on Friday. That confirmation came hours after Deadline reported that both the writers and the studios had a new sense of guarded optimism that somehow the strike will be over, of course, the strike, heading toward its 100th day next week. There are, and I don't know if she'll do it, but there are now some California politicians asking Taylor Swift to delay her upcoming Los Angeles shows in solidarity with striking hotel workers. Democratic Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis joined other officials Tuesday, along with Unite Here Local 11, to call on Swift to show her support. In their letter, they point out that while hotels jack up their prices for a big event like Taylor Swift's show, many housekeepers and other workers are still fighting for a living wage, and they never see that money. All right, that is the news here on the Nikki Maduro Show. So I want to get right to it. But first, I was remiss yesterday in not asking you to click the like button. So please click the like button if you can. Really appreciate that. It helps us with YouTube. And of course, you know the website by now. It is thenikkimaduroshow.com. The Patreon, the PayPal links are there. The Super Chat is live. And of course, this show is crowdfunded. However, I want to thank Joe Fong, who right out of the gate slaps down a $20 super sticker. Joe Fong, you are appreciated, and thank you so much for that. Okay, let's get to the Trump situation. We have a serious situation. It's what I've been waiting for, but I don't know if it's enough. And maybe I'm being greedy here. I expected more than 4, and maybe we'll see more. Maybe this isn't the end of it. More than 4 counts in this indictment. I kind of felt like this is where the proof was really just kind of laying right out in the open for everyone to see. But let's talk about this and see what you have, what you thinking in the chat. First, let me lay out the case here. I was reading, trying to find it. I was reading a Politico argument, a Politico report about this, the indictments. I'm trying to find it. Here it is. It's called A Very Different Indictment, and it's from the Politico Playbook newsletter. And they have some things to say here. They're calling it the crimes that Jack Smith alleged yesterday against Donald Trump, far grander in scope than the business records fraud case in New York or the classified documents case in Florida. They are accusing Trump of a three-pronged attack on democracy, according to this Politico piece. Conspiracies that targeted a bedrock function of the United States federal government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of its presidential election. It is alleged to be one of the most significant documents, this indictment, of our political era because of its unprecedented set of accusations. I've been reading a lot about, there's 6 unnamed co-conspirators, rather. And it looks like they know who. It's very easy to figure out and, connect the dots to 5 of them. The 6th remains unknown. But here's who they are. Co-conspirator number 1, Rudy Giuliani, who led the effort, they say, to pressure state legislators to reverse election results. It's pretty clear that that's the first co-conspirator. The second is John Eastman, who is a constitutional lawyer who helped develop the strategy to pressure Pence to overturn the election on January 6th. Sidney Powell is the third, a conservative lawyer who pushed these out there theories about manipulation of voting machines and other things, went on Fox News spouting lies. Another one is Ken Chesborough, who was apparently the person who put together the fake elector strategy. So that's another one. And then Clark, I don't have a first name, the pressured Department of Justice leaders to sow doubt about the election results. And then the 6th is described as a political consultant who helped come up with this whole plan to put out a false slate of electors in place. We don't know exactly who that is, but we're supposed to see more on that in the coming days. I'm just, when you read about the coup attempt, and it's so ugly and so, blatant. It seems crazy that it's taken this long for America to act. I love that we do this investigation and that we, get all our, as they say, I's dotted and T's crossed. But if this is the case, if we had a sitting president trying to overthrow the American system of democracy, should we not have moved swiftly and surely at that moment to make sure he couldn't do this again? Now we've got a real problem with him running for office. And the very arguable defense that, oh, this is a political witch hunt because look, I'm running for office and I'm at the top of the polls again. It's being called by Rick Hasen at UCLA Law, as posted in Slate, not only the most important indictment by far of the former President Donald Trump's slate of indictments, it is perhaps, he writes, the most important indictment ever handed down to safeguard American democracy and the rule of law in any U.S. court against anyone. And the judge that they picked for this case has been known to put some harsh sentences, in most people's minds, not in my mind, against the January 6th defendants. She has already dealt the ex-president one of the most significant legal blows, which was a ruling in November of 2021 that gave the House January 6th committee access to Trump's White House files. And it's that evidence, all the memos that were written, the logs of calls, the papers, the interviews with his trusted advisors that allow the January 6th committee to put this case together. I I don't know what you think. Let's go to the chat because I know a lot of people are just itching to talk about this, as I was yesterday afternoon to have this conversation. So let's get into it and see what you have to say. All right. Um, Chris writes, I doubt there's ever been an unarmed coup in Western history. Well, many of them were armed in this case. John writing back to Chris, one of his family could not pass security check and use Trump's influence to get a security clearance. Right, that's true. I believe his children were who you're referring to. Um, oh, the local ABC affiliate had no Trump indictment coverage. That's hard. Seems hard to believe. Vilma says it took long for this indictment because of the Mueller report and the January 6th investigation. The law, she says, travels slowly. Too slowly for my taste, Vilma. About 2020 January, I tested positive for COVID. Oh, I'm sorry that happened. Well, I hope you're all better now. Sounds like that was a rough one. Mike in Napa writes, the country is being taken away by people who have no idea how to run it. If Trump and the congressmen and senators that were part of January 6th aren't all sent to prison, there's no point anymore. I had this conversation with my dad yesterday, Mike. And he's conservative and we agree on this. And my comment to him was, listen, there should be something as Americans, regardless of party, that we should all be able to agree on. And that is the United States Constitution being the rule of law in this country, right? I mean, if that doesn't make you an American, regardless of how you interpret it, regardless of whether you think it allows you to burn the flag or not, or whether it allows you to have a gun or not, if that document isn't held sacred, then you're right. What's the point? That's what we believe in. That's who we are as people. And so when you have a candidate like Trump, who clearly doesn't care about the oath made to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, why do you have so many people supporting him? I mean, that should be something we agree on. I don't even care about your politics. You might want to back a conservative. You might be fiscally conservative. You might be socially conservative, whatever. But to back this guy, who I know it's accused, alleged, innocent till proven guilty, but we all saw it. We all saw what he did. We all know who he is, right? For that to happen and for people to still support him, it just blows my mind. It blows my mind because that should be the thing we can all agree on. This country should be united against him. That's what we should be. Vilma says, remember, Trump declared very early to run for the presidency. Yes, because I think he knew, right? But still, this should have happened very quickly. And everyone in that White House who is disgusted by what happened there should have come forward immediately. Vilma also writing, Trump's sole reason for running for the presidency is partly to get himself off the hook, out from under these indictments. Absolutely. And it's not a bad strategy. It really isn't. Because if he wins before these cases are tried, he'll be able to direct his Department of Justice to make it all go away. And if for some reason he's convicted or something happens before that, He'll just be able to pardon himself and all those involved. Yeah. Eric writing, when you look back to Germany in the 1930s and see how the fascists rose to power, there's a lot of parallels today with the right wing. Germans believe their government betrayed them over World War One. James writing, sadly, the case looks weak at this point. You think? I don't know. Spent a long time putting it together. It looks pretty solid to me. They need to prove that he knew he lost. It doesn't look like they have that. Or if they could show direct communication between White House, R. Stone, Bannon, etc. People told him he lost. Experts told him he lost. His staffers told him he lost. I guess you could argue, well, I believe. How do you disprove that someone believes that they won an election in the face of all the evidence to the contrary? Mental illness, refusing to accept what's right in front of you? I don't know. Perry Joe Jim Bob, none of this will mean anything if we don't get the trial started soon. Harry says he might be able to pardon himself. The House can still impeach. Square says, if Trump said they're not taxing me, they're taxing you, I would believe it. Katie writing, you're right that everyone at the White House at the time should have come forward immediately, but I'm very comfortable with Jack Smith taking all the time he needed. That's where we landed. That's where it had to be, right? Trump is playing every card he can, writes the Lady Beatrice, to try and escape accountability, which is why we need the trial expedited before he flees the country. I don't see that happening. I think he legitimately believes he can beat this. I do. I read an article yesterday that one of the people that knows him says he's uh, a little worried about this one, that it's affecting him. Well, good. Daniel writing, our judicial system has morphed so much to cater to the wealthy and powerful. Yeah, you're not wrong on that one. Vilma stating what I've been saying for a while, this election, we must vote Biden just because the alternative is to vote for dismantling our government and our democracy. It's unfathomable to me that he would get into office again. Really. James playing the devil's advocate. We always need that. Thank you. Even though people told him he lost, there were also people telling him there was voter fraud. Murphy says, I know he lost. He asked for votes to be found. Right. I mean, how do you not? I mean, if that's not evidence, how do you not realize? I just need you to find these votes. That's all I need. Perry Joe Jim Bob, I'm waiting to see who will tell the truth and work with prosecutors. Danielle, maybe writing again. Our judicial system is at a breaking point, catered so much to the wealthy and powerful. I'm sorry, I had to sneeze. Morning sneeze. Usually there's about 3 of them, so beware. Trump is the poster child for narcissistic personality disorder, and he needs to be institutionalized. I wouldn't disagree with that. Here comes another one. My bad. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm telling you, 3 of them will come. Lori, good morning to you. She says they've given many examples of people telling him he lost and witnessing his awareness of his loss in his words and his actions. And I think that'll be the key, Lori, his actions. You know, what did he do? You don't ask for votes to be found if you know you won. I don't know. Republicans too chicken to stand up for Trump. Sherry says James Comey is responsible for giving us Trump in the first place by reopening Hillary's email scandal in a couple of weeks before the election. Sandy, there's something seriously wrong with this country if he's able to run for president again after everything that has happened. I completely agree. Sad that we have half the country that wants our democracy to fail, and it will if Trump becomes president again. What do we do? What do we do if we believe in the grand experiment that was America, that is America? What do we do if we want to keep our Constitution and fix what's wrong and believe still that we can be what the founding fathers hoped we would be, or better than they ever hoped we could be. I just I'm scared about it. I truly am scared about it. And I feel like if Trump isn't held accountable and skates on this, that we could lose big time as a country. Um, so let's talk about his defense. He says, first of all, that he won the election, right? So that's one thing. Let's see the defense. Here it is. The two lines of defense that they're talking about for this. The first is that Trump will argue that anything he said about fraud is protected speech under the First Amendment. So I have a right to say and think that I won the election, right? Pardon me. Morning sneezes, and I'm by myself. So what are you going to do? The argument has been panned by legal pundits who point out, stick 'em up and give me all your money is routinely used as evidence to establish the predicate of a crime. So sometimes your speech and what you say is used against you in a court of law. So it might be free speech, but again, not free from consequences, as we've talked about in the past, right? You could say whatever you want, but there's consequences to that end. But the defense that they think might actually carry more weight is the second one. Because the thinking is that prosecutor Jack Smith won't be able to prove that Trump really knew there was no election fraud. So, despite the indictment having a lot of details about Trump, who was repeatedly told by the people who were in the best position to know that the election was fairly decided, he will likely argue he genuinely believed there was fraud and therefore he did not act corruptly. And that's the defense they say is going to work. Proving his belief. How do you say, even if in the face of all the evidence, that someone didn't believe something that they legitimately believe? Let's talk about religion. I could give you a million reasons, why the earth couldn't have been created, the world couldn't have been created in 7 days, or how a person couldn't have been created from a rib, or how you couldn't fit every species on the planet in an ark, or whatever reasons I want to give for disproving our origin story in the Bible. But if you believe it, you believe it. And who am I to say that you're wrong in having that belief? As they say, you can't see love, but it's there. You believe in love. I don't know. But it's harder to challenge somebody's beliefs, even if they're based on completely, on things that are not in reality at all, based on in reality. But the quote is this, and I think it's pretty powerful. Forget hush money payments to porn stars, hidden as business expenses. Forget showing off classified documents about Iran's attack plans to visitors and then ordering the pool guy to erase the security tapes, revealing that he was still holding on to documents that he'd promised to return. Forget even corrupt attempts to interfere with election results in Georgia in 2020. The federal indictment just handed down by special counsel Jack Smith is not only the most important indictment by far of former President Donald Trump, it is perhaps the most important indictment ever handed down to safeguard American democracy and the rule of law in any U.S. court against anyone. I mean, let it sink in. That's what we're dealing with here. That's where we've come. Do you think it's interesting or surprising that that this is the first time we've been here, really, in this type of a situation? Wall Street Journal writes that there may be problems with prosecutor Jack Smith's case, potentially criminalizing many kinds of actions and statements by a president that a prosecutor deems to be false. Wall Street Journal is writing, it's a slippery slope It makes any future election challenges, however valid, legally vulnerable to a partisan prosecutor. And it might have criminalized the actions by Al Gore and George W. Bush to contest the Florida election result in 2000. I don't think that's true. I think there, as on the Mark Thompson show, they say there are processes, protocols, and standards. There are standards for challenging an election. There are standards for a recount. Those things are valid and okay. By the book, challenging an election by the book. And then you saw Al Gore stand up at the end of it and say, I concede. I've lost. Let's unite as a country behind the person that has elected the president. Whether he thought in his heart that he had been wronged, or whether many people thought he had been wronged, and that a decision by the Supreme Court shouldn't decide an election. We all united behind a candidate because he did. I don't think you can compare the two. National Review saying this Trump indictment shouldn't stand. It's endeavoring to criminalize protected political speech and flimsy legal theories when the Supreme Court has repeatedly admonished prosecutors who refrain from creative theories to stretch penal laws to reach misconduct that Congress has not made illegal. I disagree with that. But the GOP candidates are lining up mostly in defense of Trump. Tim Scott, of course, with the whataboutism yesterday. What we see here today are two totally different tracks of justice, one for political opponents, another for the son of the current president. Because he can't talk about the case at hand because it's so egregious and so awful and so jaw-dropping. The only thing you can do is point at Hunter Biden. At what point does that just become, to coin the word from the Wall Street Journal, flimsy? We know what you're doing. We can see what you're doing. You took a case against Hunter Biden that was, a nothing burger at best. Yeah, does it suck that he didn't pay his taxes on time? It does. Then he turned around and paid them. Should a drug user have access to a weapon? Absolutely not. Should he have lied about it? No. You cannot look at that case the same way you do an attempted coup against the United States of America. I'm sorry, Republicans, it doesn't stand. It doesn't hold water. And it's not reasonable and logical. And most people see that. I have to believe it. Vivek Ramaswamy talked about repeating his promise to pardon Trump and said January 6th was the result of censorship. He said Donald Trump isn't the cause of what happened January 6th. The real cause was the systematic, pervasive censorship of citizens in the year leading up to it. You think that's true? You think people were so upset that they were being censored? That's why that they went to the Capitol and did the riot? I don't think so. I think they were whipped into a frenzy by a nut who wanted to stay in power and called upon them to help him do it. Ron DeSantis, who has also in the past said he would pardon Trump, leaned into the idea that any Washington jury was inherently unjust. Washington, D.C. is a swamp, he said, and it's unfair to have to stand trial before a jury reflective of that swamp mentality. So Ron DeSantis thinks that no one in Washington, D.C. can get a fair trial because it's such a swamp that anyone selected for a jury wouldn't be able or moral enough to render a verdict. Okay. Nothing from Nikki Haley on this yet. In the past, though, she suggested she would also pardon. Chris Christie comes out swinging, though, last night. He said the events around the White House from election night forward are a stain on our country's history and a disgrace to the people who participated. This disgrace falls the most on Donald Trump. So if you're a Republican, Chris Christie seems pretty palatable to me. I mean, you still get all the same conservative policies that you want, but you get someone who believes that the principles, the founding principles of this country are worth fighting for. Asa Hutchinson said, "I've always said Donald Trump is morally responsible for the attack on our democracy. Now, with today's indictment, our system of justice will determine whether he's criminally responsible." And with that, he put a fundraising link for his campaign. Um, Will Hurd, and we don't hear much about him. He is a never Trump candidate. He said Trump's presidential bid is driven by an attempt to stay out of prison and scam his supporters into footing his legal bills. His denial of the 2020 election results and actions January 6th show he is unfit for office. And then you have Mike Pence, who kind of is wishy-washy around speaking out against former President Trump, but not yesterday. He said, "Today's indictment," he said this yesterday, "serves as an important reminder. Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States." And I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Finally, something from Mike Pence. Strong. Joe Biden didn't say much. He went to a movie last night, saw Oppenheimer. That's it. Didn't say anything about Trump. Um, yeah, I guess I expected more indictments to be involved in this, and I'm hoping maybe we'll see some more added as this goes along, but maybe not. I don't know. We talked about those unnamed co-conspirators. One of them, Rudy Giuliani, and I guess Rudy Giuliani didn't take the whole news of the indictment well yesterday. He was on Newsmax and he was being interviewed, and he flips out, starts criticizing special counsel Jack Smith. Um, he said Trump's First Amendment right to free speech had been violated by the indictment. He said Smith should be indicted for indicting the former president. Smith should be indicted for indicting. Okay. He said, "This one will be your legacy, violating the right of free speech of an American citizen. You don't get to violate people's First Amendment rights, Smith, no matter who the hell you are." He's co-conspirator number one. That's who he is. That's what your legacy will be, Giuliani. That's how you'll be remembered. You won't be necessarily remembered for being the face of leadership on September 11th. You can still visualize him walking amongst the rubble. No, you will be remembered for what you did to act against America, Rudy Giuliani. That's what you'll be remembered for. So while you're pointing fingers at Jack Smith, saying that's how he'll be remembered, well, know this. This is how you will be remembered. Co-conspirator number one, an attorney who was willing to spread knowingly false claims and pursue strategies that the defendant, Trump's 2020 re-election campaign attorneys, would not. He said, "I cooperated against him like hell I did. I don't have any information that he violated the law." I think Rudy Giuliani is headed for an indictment himself. I think, right? And then you have one of the victims of the January 6th riots speaking out. This is an officer injured that day who says he wants justice. This is Michael Finoni. He's a DC Metropolitan Police officer who was there that day that the riot happened. He said, our justice system has a duty to try those who commit crimes, and Donald Trump must answer for his. He is not above the law. His attack on our democracy was un-American, despicable, and unforgivable." I agree. Of course, Finoni was brutally beaten. He was burned during the attack on the Capitol. He called the insurrection malicious. He criticized Republicans for continuing to stand by the former president, who is unbelievably still leading in the polls for the GOP presidential race for 2024. He said, "It disgusts me that House Republicans are heinously coming to the defense of Trump's criminal behavior while putting up the foundation of our democracy as collateral." That is exactly right. Let me read it again. House Republicans are heinously coming to the defense of Trump's criminal behavior while putting up the foundation of our democracy as collateral. How do you believe more in a person than you believe in the foundation of our democracy? And how are you willing to risk the foundation of our democracy? It should be something we are circling around, rallying around, trying to protect. Harry Dunn, Capitol Police officer, who was struggling to defend the Capitol for hours, called the indictment only a mile marker along the highway to justice and accountability. Winston Pingen, another former member of the force, beaten during the incident, uh, what he called it hand-to-hand combat outside the Capitol. He said he was one step closer to seeing justice for himself and others. So you have the officers, the police officers that were beaten, burned, all saying, "This is important, what just happened. This is justice for us." But I was reading an article in the Huffington Post about maybe the timing of this indictment and how this all played out. And there is a Harvard law professor who is saying it's the timing that could be the real problem here. He said the indictment handed down yesterday was brilliant. No problem there. But he says, I do think the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, did not proceed as fast as he might have. So this is Lawrence Tribe, who was on MSNBC last night. He says if the next presidency is held either by Donald Trump or one of his acolytes or by virtually any Republican, there is the horrible prospect this will all be wiped away. And that it will be relegated to a kind of historic footnote. It can't be a footnote. It can't be a footnote. Tribe says it's a reminder of how vulnerable and fragile the legal system is. He said we have a system that might go too slowly, that might be too opaque, and a system not at all guaranteed to triumph over politics. Yeah. I'm going to play you a little bit of what he had to say. I think it's pretty powerful. Bear with me while I'll bring it up on the screen here for us. I think it's good to look at everything, all sides of the issue. But what he has to say is a little scary because I don't want this to be a footnote of history.
Professor Tribe, Andrew Weissman's still with us here in the studio. We all shared public doubts about how Merrick Garland was handling this before he appointed Jack Smith. What's your sense of how Merrick Garland has handled this case thus far?
Well, I think the appointment of Jack Smith was a brilliant stroke. His experience at The Hague made it clear that he was ready for this, and he's proceeded as fast as he could. I do think that Merrick Garland did not proceed as fast as he might have. I think much of what many of us fear, namely that this will drag on, that even if there is a verdict, a conviction, for example, there could be an appeal that would last into the next presidency. And if the next presidency is held either by Donald Trump or by one of his acolytes or by virtually any Republican, there is the horrible prospect that this will all be wiped away and that it will be relegated to a kind of historic footnote. It will never be just a footnote because, as your guests have all correctly said, this is monumental. But unlike some of the other monumental cases, like the ones that Neil Katyal mentioned, Dred Scott, Marbury v. Madison, Brown v. Board, none of those were subject to being simply erased by the results of a political election. What is quite unique here is that however brilliant and however well-grounded in facts and law this indictment is, and I certainly agree it couldn't have been better, and I agree with Andrew Weissman that it skirts the First Amendment problems that might have existed if it were focused on incitement. However brilliant it is subject to being wiped out. And that really makes me think about how vulnerable and fragile our legal system is, how slow it is, how even the fact that the dramatic picture you paint when you read this indictment, the fact that all of that is going to be hidden from the American public unless we can somehow convince the judges with power to make the decision that this should be a televised trial, which I think it should be. It can all be hidden. And that points up the ways in which our legal system is vulnerable. The rule of law is powerful. It can prevail. It can preserve democracy if this trial is allowed to reach a firm conclusion. And I think the conclusion that the facts and law point to is a conviction in all likelihood. But if it goes too slowly, or if there are interferences, or if, as Andrew Weissman says, politics overtakes it all, and the ultimate court of public opinion, if that includes people who just don't care, who basically say, yes, he did it, but we don't care. We don't trust our institutions enough to care about preserving them, then we're in real trouble. So we have a system that might go too slowly, that might be too opaque, and a system that is not at all guaranteed to triumph over politics. So that's my overall view of where we are.
Do we care enough to preserve what makes America America? Do we care enough? I want to think we care enough. And I think we have to move more quickly. Thanks to MSNBC for that video. I'm going to go back to the chat, see what you guys have to say. Vilma writing, people forget the case against Trump was heard by a grand jury. The grand jury usually says if a case can go forward or not. Well, but we have, who was it? Ron DeSantis calling the people of Washington, D.C. swamp creatures, basically, saying it's a swamp. So no one who lives there, no one who is there is able to really render a decision that he would respect anyway. Daniel says the problem is that people will interpret the Constitution as they want to for their own game, unless they have goodwill in their hearts. I would say, though, Daniel, that whatever way you interpret the Constitution, trying to break the Constitution, trying to thwart it, that is what I'm saying we should all be able to rally against. However you interpret it. I may look at the Second Amendment differently than someone else. You know, I may look at other things in the Constitution and read it differently than someone else would. And constitutional law professors interpret it differently. Forget what I think. However you interpret it, though, it still is the law of the land, and I would argue worth being preserved, worth our time and effort. And so if we can't agree on that, if you would support someone like Donald Trump, who tried to dismantle what this country stands for, I have a problem with that. And I have a problem with who you are as a person. I think it's un-American. I really do. Bill writing, I wish they would arraign him and put him in jail right now. Anyone else would be immediately remanded into custody. Rich people don't do jail time. Liz writing this morning, how about the GOP presidential candidates who still support 45 despite the indictments? Yeah, we just kind of rolled through that list. Unbelievable. Inconceivable, you could say, right? Vilma saying Trump believing he really won is subjective. Who knows what a troubled mind believes, especially Trump's. And that's the issue, isn't it? How do you challenge a belief? It's with proof. Happiness is Hunter and Trump sharing the same cell at Gitmo. Perry Joe, Jim Bob, you know I love ya. I don't think the crimes rise to the same level, honestly. I don't. Eric says the corporations have taken over. Trump and his ilk are their puppets. Mindy is scared and angry that people living in this country vote for scum like Trump. And I don't think it's because they can't see it, right? I don't think it's because they can't see it. They're just somehow cowed by allegiance to a strong man. And what makes a person fall victim to that type of thinking? It's something that's always fascinated me, how we could be so different. Tom writing this morning, all the flying monkeys were Republicans, Trump's own people. Yeah. Jennifer writes this morning, according to the trumpets, he won the election. That said, he's ineligible for a third term. Let's see. What else do you guys have to say? James writing this morning, they have to prove he knew he lost. Hopefully they have witnesses that can testify that he admitted this. Luis says, so if I believe I'm an Arab prince, I can scam grandma of her life savings when I ask her to send me her cash in exchange for a reward later. But just because you believe. And that's the thing. The belief doesn't excuse the scam, doesn't excuse the crime. David saying if you commit a crime because you believe you are not committing a crime, it's still a crime. What? I didn't know robbing 7-Eleven was a crime. I believed it was fine. What do they say? Ignorance of the law is not no excuse. Vilma with Trump has been a grifter all of his life and a very shady all of his life. Yeah, he's a criminal. He's a total scumbag criminal. Absolutely. His skid's on the edge of lawlessness. It's time to pay the piper. Aussie rules. Social media, great to have YouTube, but it's a big reason for the rise of MAGA. You think YouTube is? Maybe. I don't know. Well, then it's important to have other voices like mine and Nikki's and Mark Thompson's and John Daly's here too. So people can have a logical, reasonable discussion. And again, as I've said in the past, I'm always willing to entertain a different frame of reference, a different thought on all of this, a dissenting opinion. Let's talk about it. If you disagree, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to do that. It's not a my way or the highway kind of thing. I will consider logically what you are telling me if you disagree with me, if you think I'm full of crap. Right? And you can say, here's why I think you're full of crap, Kim. And we can have a discussion, a back and forth, hopefully civil. But with a lot of these other voices, it's my way or the highway. And if you don't think how I think, then there's something wrong with you. I don't believe that. Mindy says, if you commit a crime knowing it's an illegal act, you're breaking the law and you have committed a crime. Yeah. Perry Joe Jim Bob says, as a sign of my Republican past, I can use commie not as a reference to ideology, but a cuss word for Russia and China. Okay. James with, otherwise, there's a chance they can prove he knew the fake elector scheme was not legal. I'm pretty sure Cassidy Hutchins was present when John Eastman talked about the plan not being legal. Yeah, they all knew. We saw it all laid out in the January 6th testimony, right? Vilma says Fox News, John Hannity, Laura Ingraham are responsible for the rise of Trump and for spreading lies as truth, and they still do it today. Outrageous. It's not news. It's not journalism. Sandy, why do they still support him? What is wrong with the GOP? Aren't they supposed to be for law and order? Why do they support someone who is so lawless? I can't disagree with you. And I think that's what concerns me the most, is that he would be ahead in the polls. Now, you've heard Michael Schur and Jim Avila say, despite that, even if he gets the nomination for the GOP, there's no way he wins. I was reading an article that agreed with that line of thinking yesterday, and it's what gives me hope. It really does. Is he has a 60% disapproval rating overall, Sandy? So I think there are more people that see it than not. And while I don't think you can ever take your eye off of him or stop fighting him, because when you ignore him or think he's not a threat, that's when he scoots in the back and wins. I do think that it's not as dire a situation as we might think. So, Harry talks about whataboutism equals because of Hunter, Trump gets a pass. Whataboutism drives me crazy. With Tim Scott and immediately pointing out, well, Hunter Biden, blah, 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 blah. You know, two frames of justice, one for Trump and one for the president's son. No, Tim Scott, let's stick to the task at hand, because this isn't about Hunter Biden. This is about Trump. So if anyone tries to bring Hunter Biden into the discussion, no. Hunter Biden's case is Hunter Biden's case. Trump's case is Trump's case. They are not comparable. They are not having anything to do with each other. So I reject that whataboutism. I reject it. Mindy says Republicans have morphed into the party of crime and chaos, no longer the party of law and disorder. And I'll go back to the conversation I had with my dad. I'd like to believe more Republicans are like him, where, you know, I disagree with some of his social policies. I disagree with the way he, you know, kind of old school, looking at trans issues, that type of thing. We disagree on those things. But when you look at being a reasonable person, thinking about the Constitution, supporting the Constitution. My dad was in the Navy. And I think, not that all of us, I didn't serve, and I revere the Constitution, but I think especially for people that served, they have this respect for the office of the presidency, and they have this reverence for the Constitution because they swore to uphold and protect it, preserve, protect, and defend. And they look at things differently than many people do. And so for him, he sees what Trump is. He sees what's happening, you know. And I have to think that there's more Republicans like that than not. Square writing, it's hard to prove criminal intent. That's the task at hand. Asking Pence not to validate the votes isn't intent or what Trump was thinking. Harry saying asking Pence not to certify the election is criminal intent. I agree. Luis says Ron DeSantis should know swamps. He comes from Florida, and it's primarily gator. That's right. I don't know why I just had a Southern accent there. Eric Kennedy writes, Christie's just as corrupt. He shut down a major highway just to get back at political opponents. Yeah, I remember when Chris Christie told everyone the beaches are closed and then went out on the beach with his family. Not saying he's a real winner either. But at least at the very least, and how sad is it that this is where we've come, down to the wire, to the people who say the Constitution is our most important thing, our most a thing we should most protect. So, whatever kind of cad you've been in the past, at least you respect the American system of government, right? Yeah, Eric, I don't disagree with you there. But if I had to pick, if I had no other choices, and it was Chris Christie or Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, and I got those three choices, Chris Christie, right? Pence is a patriotic traitor. Vilma, Trumpism gave birth to people like Ron DeSantis, Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, etc. It did real damage to our country. It's a pity Liz Cheney got pushed out by the MAGA crowd. It's true. Because for all the ways I may disagree with her, when it counted, she stood up and put America first. Lost her job because of it. Probably knew it was coming too. But when history looks back at everything that happened here, she will be a shining star. She will be a shining star in all of this. Unless Trump wins and the history books are wiped clean of the truth, in which case, no. Mindy says none of the Republicans are worthy of the position of president. There has to be at least one option for people who won't vote for a Democrat. There has to be at least one good option, Mindy. I don't know. Liz saying, yeah, there's probably going to be more indictments down the road. Yeah, she also says, what else is Rudy going to say? He's done. He's totally done. And Mindy, put the scum in jail. Let us move on with our lives. Perry Joe Jim Bob, Trump going to be able to field a prison softball team. Vilma, GOP defending Trump because of how many followers Trump has, the QAnons and the evangelicals. And John writing, when did Republicans become such crybabies? Oh, they stole the election. Oh, they're persecuting Trump. Oh, what about Hunter? The GOP needs to come up with more than tears. What do you do, though, if it gets this bad? I think you don't defend people that are it's indefensible. That's what you don't do. The Lady Beatrice says we need Trump on sedition charges as well. January 6th would never have happened without his prompting, his fan club, sycophants who stormed the Capitol like it was the dang Bastille. Finoni, writes John Slade, was the cop they dragged out and took his gun. They were going to kill him with it until some other Trumper saved his life. True. I disagree with the calls for violence by Perry Joe Jim Bob. I have to believe in the rule of law. But Vilma says Chris Christie is the only one speaking truth to power in the GOP. That's why his candidacy is so important here, I think. She also writes, very shortly, all the monies collected will go to the Donald Trump Defense Fund to pay his legal bills. Will there be money left over for him to run for president? Does he need it? There's so many people that believe in him. Does he need it? I don't know. Let's talk about John Slade's comment. They charged people with bringing guns and ammo to the Capitol on January 6th. Where the hell did these people get this nonsense that the rioters were unarmed? Yeah. Too much radio. What's wrong with radio? Eric writes he's running as a martyr. He's making his legal defense part of his campaign. Going all in the deep state, running a witch hunt. It's not going to get him the general election, though. No. It's very interesting what you say there, Eric, that he is making his legal defense part of his campaign. And maybe he doesn't need money for TV ads because here we are talking about it. You flip to any channel, CNN, MSNBC, well, maybe not Fox News, but they're talking about these indictments and they're talking about what he feels his defense is. And his name is in the news over and over and over and over again because people that love him want to hear it and people that hate him want to talk about it, right? And people like us that are just concerned about what's happening in America, we want to talk about it. But all it All of that keeps his name front and center. It's like a, you know, like a boon for his campaign. And I mentioned yesterday about the judge who called him Rumpelstiltskin for his magical ability to somehow turn all bad press into something that benefits him. Trumpelstiltskin, I call it. He'll Trumpelstiltskin his way to this trial, being front and center, a piece of his campaign, and all this media coverage that he doesn't have to pay for will help him. I can't understand it. I can't understand it. Peach Time Peach writes, Trump didn't use the DOJ to indict his opponents. Peach Time Peach also writes, free speech is a must in a free society. Yes, Peach Time Peach, I agree with you. So let's start on that, because we can agree on that, right? Let's start at a place where we're good to go. But just because you have freedom of speech doesn't mean you have freedom from consequence of what you say. So, if I say something awful, it's my right to say it. I could say something derogatory about a group of people. I wouldn't, but I could, because it's America. And my employer might hear me say that and say, listen, Kim, my previous employer, listen, Kim, we can't have you working here because you said this thing about this entire group of people and it's really offensive. We know that you had a right to say it, but we also have a right not to employ someone who would say such a thing. And so therefore I lose my job based on something I said, but there's freedom of speech to say it. Again, not freedom from consequence. You can say that you think the election was stolen, but there's a consequence for your words that are completely, unequivocally untrue. There's a consequence for that. And then on top of it, all the actions you took because of what you believed, allegedly. And if you really think that Trump believed he won the election, come on. He knew. He knew. But yes, free speech is a must in a free society. Hopefully we're responsible enough to use that right in a way that would make it so we didn't have to face the consequences for saying something stupid, right? So I think we agree on at least part of that, Peach Time Peach. And thank you for your comments. James writing, I think a lot of Americans no longer understand our system of government and are willing to sacrifice our Constitution in order to protect the status quo and fend off Marxist communists, the woke. Don't sacrifice the Constitution for anything. Anything. Regarding Trump's belief that he won the election, Trump made the statement that he couldn't believe he lost to Biden. What does that tell you? To me, says he knew he lost. You're not wrong, Vilma. Not wrong. Yeah, and she also writes the GOP has lost their way. Eric responding to Peach Time Peach, there's actual evidence that Trump politicized the DOJ. If you're just going to spread lies and talking points, why are you here? Listen, as I said, it's okay to have dissenting opinions, even in the chat. And I think we can reasonably discuss and disagree. Now, if you're just here to stoke the flames, that's one thing. But if you really want to talk about it, then talk about it. And please respond kindly to Peach Time Peach and answer questions. Eric, I happen to agree with your opinion, but please be open to explaining what your thoughts are to Peach. I assume Peach Time Peach would be a lady, but maybe not. Champagne Wishes says they've just accepted they can't change Washington, politics, and the people in it. Peach Time Peach saying there's still no evidence Trump committed a crime. Well, Peach Time Peach, how about you and I have a homework assignment? How about we actually read the indictment that was handed down yesterday? It's available everywhere, and you can read through it. And how about after that, you come back tomorrow and we talk about whether there's any evidence that Trump committed a crime or not? Because if you actually read the indictment, I think it's pretty clear that not one crime was committed, but multiple crimes. I think there's a lot of evidence. You don't bring a case like this, peach time peach, against a former president of the United States without being able to back it up. You can just willy-nilly throw out indictments. You have to be able to really show a line and a pattern and criminality. This is not just a political witch hunt. You can, believe that rhetoric. When it comes down to what's happening in a court of law, it has to be proven and it has to be shown. And if there wasn't proof, there would be no indictments here. So I would urge you to read the indictment. I will too. I'll do it tonight. I'll read the whole thing. And then let's come back and let's talk about it, because I think that it's easy for you to say there's no evidence Trump committed a crime without having looked at the evidence. And so let's look at it. I am reading people's comments because Bertastic, we're having a conversation. Nikki is at her second job today, and we'll be back tomorrow. But I don't have to read people's comments. Let's move on then. If you're not happy with that, I am happy to move on to other stories of the day. So let's talk about Gavin Newsom. Why don't we? Gavin Newsom has said over and over again he's not running for president, right? But apparently his fundraising strategy is sending up other bat signals. He is taking fundraising steps often used by potential presidential candidates, setting up multiple committees that in their first 3 months have raised and spent millions of dollars. Story in the Sacramento Bee. So it's the way that he is raising money that is raising questions about his real intent. Speaking of continuing the conversation, though, I am going to put the link in the chat, as Nikki and I like to do. In case you want to chime in on the show and talk to me face to face, or even with just a picture or the dark silhouette, and express your thoughts. So there's the link there. But I wonder what you think about Gavin Newsom. Do we believe that he's not running? I don't think he'll run against Biden. But laying the groundwork with a fundraising effort, that may tell a different story. Let's talk about this other story that I had read last night. There are apparently not enough teachers for transitional kindergarten. And I saw earlier in the chat, people didn't know what transitional kindergarten, or TK, is. It is now, it used to be kindergarten was the earliest grade in school. Now there's a grade before kindergarten, and it's called transitional kindergarten. And it's like preschool. Studies have shown that kids that have a year or two of preschool end up doing better through their whole school career. And why should that just be reserved for kids whose parents can afford to pay for preschool, right? So the school system now is offering TK, and there's a law mandating California schools to offer TK to parents. Problem is, there's not enough teachers to make TK a reality. And so there is a teacher shortage, and there is a school district that won't be able to offer TK to its community in Alturas, California. And I don't think it's going to get better. And you see teachers resigning right and left. They're not making enough money. They're dealing with behavioral problems. Yes. I don't think it's a thankless job. I know we always thank our teachers, but it's a tough slog being a teacher for not a lot of pay. No. And I don't see that there's going to be more teachers, enough teachers anyway, to institute this new grade in California. My son went to TK in the public school system, and it was wonderful and lovely. But with a shortage of teachers, is it realistic to assume that we will be able, really, to institute a TK program. All right. So I put the link out for you to call in, and Patrick's time has come forward to talk. So let's do it. Welcome, Patrick's time. I hear you.
How you doing, Kim?
I'm good. How are you? Welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. What's on your mind?
Just listening to the show. I disagree with just about everything you said, so I just figured I'd call in and have a civil conversation with you.
Are you Peach Time Peach?
I am.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about it. I'm so glad you called.
Right.
So let's start where I thought we agreed. What did you say? You said that the freedom of speech, right? That we should, that we should all be able to say what we want to say. And my response to you was freedom of speech is not freedom from consequence. Do you disagree with that?
No, it's common sense. Nothing to disagree with there.
Oh, okay.
Not
so where is it?
Up there. Yeah.
Where is it that we part company?
Well, as far as the indictments go, I mean, you talk about this Trump thing. My thoughts on it is Trump's questioned the election, and I think he thoroughly believes that he won the election. Not many people on Republicans believe that Joe Biden, who couldn't get an audience, couldn't fill a gymnasium, was able to get 81 million votes. I mean, he didn't get the support. There was no enthusiasm for him, and elections are driven by enthusiasm. And
okay,
common sense will tell you that it's just not plausible that Joe Biden, who has run for election many of times, is the most popular president in history with 81 million votes. It's just.
So let me tell you something that happened, and I don't know if this is going to change your mind, but just maybe we're just running in different circles, so you didn't see the enthusiasm. But not only did the people that I know mount a postcard writing campaign to people in other states, because we're here in California, but we also, the night that President Biden won, held a dance party in the street. There was joy and enthusiasm there. So maybe you just didn't see the enthusiasm. But let's go back to what you were saying about President Trump's believing that he won the election. Because again, as we talked about earlier, it's going to be hard to be proving that he didn't actually have that belief.
Well, can I make a comment? I mean,
please. Yeah.
If you go back to 2016, after Trump won the election, for 4 years he was investigated, and he was a illegitimate president. I mean, they were being investigated for him being a Russian agent. Nobody went after the Democrats or tried to indict them for the same thing that Trump did. I mean, what Trump did was things that Democrats did many of times. I mean, they've been down that same road. They had the same plans on some of this stuff.
But here I would say to you, Peach Time Peach, that the investigation into Trump for being, colluding with Russia didn't end up bearing any fruit, because you have to have proof. He's not the first president, Democrat or Republican, to be investigated for something. Sometimes it bears fruit, like when Clinton lied and was basically impeached for the lie, right? For telling a lie. So people will be, regardless of party, investigated. There's politics are always going to be at play. And Trump isn't the first sitting president to be investigated for something. But it didn't, he's not being persecuted. Clinton was impeached. So every president, it seems like, has politics working against them, and so did he. And it didn't bear fruit. There wasn't enough evidence to find Russian collusion. So why is that? Why are you upset by that?
Everybody knew that there was Russian collusion. Everybody knew that the narrative was a political hoax. I mean, we all knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was real. I mean, everything that comes out from the right is a conspiracy theory. And then, I mean, I just can't. After the last 4 or 5 years, all these investigations, all the allegations against Trump, every time they come out, oh, we got him this time, and it turns out to be false. It turns out to be fake allegations or just misinformation.
Okay.
All the time, it's misrepresented. It's a story from a story that somebody put out there. It's never validated. I mean, these we don't have. You guys don't have a laptop from one of the Trump kids with the crimes that that we have for the Biden family, and the way that you guys.
So I would argue
under the rug and then claim that there's all this evidence of Trump. There just isn't.
I would argue, though, Peach, that
you can call me
that Patrick. My bad. Patrick. I would argue that the crimes of Hunter Biden have not been connected to his father.
Well, who's
they trotted out. Well, they trotted out this witness this week.
I know,
and the witness was not able to corroborate or to draw any line between Hunter and his father. And when you call them the Biden crime family, there's no proof that President Biden had any misdealings or did anything against the law or anything like that. And I really think it's whataboutism. So why can't we look at Trump and what he did? And I have a question for you.
Well, time out. You said a lot there, Kim. Let me just make a quick response.
Well, let me ask you this question first, because I am dying to know. When you hear recordings of former President Trump say, "I just need you to find me 11,780 votes," what do you think? And please answer that question, because I really want to know. When you heard him say those words, what was your thought process? What did you think about that?
It didn't sound good. It didn't sound good at all. And it is concerning there, but in the scheme of things, there was probably a longer conversation there, and you're looking at one little thing there. The mail-in voting and the way in which they went about changing the rules for voting during that election because of COVID without the authority of the courts was illegal. That whole voting system would, if we would have had regular elections, there wouldn't have been 81 million votes for Biden.
So here's the thing, Patrick,
you made a comment about how I believing things in previously. I want to go back to the Hunter Biden and the Trump thing, because.
But I don't want to talk about Hunter. Patrick, want to talk about Hunter Biden, because I don't think it's.
I'm not going to talk about Hunter Biden.
Okay, because I don't think it's pertinent. We're talking about Trump. But go ahead.
I'm talking about Trump, and I'm talking about Joe Biden, our current sitting president. It's just amazing that for years y'all believed so much of the Russian dossier. You believed everything about the Russian collusion narrative. It never panned out, but yet y'all believed it. Now all this evidence of Biden comes out, and y'all don't believe any of it. But yet there's actually real evidence there.
Where's the evidence? They can't prove it. They can't even have a so-called star witness that offers any connection between anything Hunter did and his father.
We have all the emails, Kim, and
there's no proof. But what emails? Because I would question that your sources looking at emails are not accurate.
So is it Russian disinformation like it was years ago, or are we past that now? Can we all agree that where
do you usually get your information? Is it Fox News, or is it like alternative sources, or where are you looking for your information?
I try to listen to y'all to get another perspective and maybe an enlightening view, but there's nothing here. You guys are pundits and gatekeepers for the establishments. It's astonishing to me that y'all comment about how anti-corporate y'all are. Y'all want to tax the rich, and y'all want to do all these things to help the middle class and the poor people. But all you're doing is advocating for the rich people in their policies. I mean, all of it. It's shocking to me that y'all are so dense. I mean, I listen to everybody.
It's so interesting. And I respect you for wanting to have a different, listen to different opinions. I think that's great. But it's interesting that you look at us and think.
You listen to any other poison views?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I read a lot of different points of view. I read Fox News stories. I read some conservative.
But you understand that Fox News is owned by the same people that own MSNBC and CNN. So you're really not getting a alternate view. They're both sides are going to be very, very much pro-Ukraine war and advocating to send funds and over there. So
so you don't believe in helping the people of Ukraine? You think Russia's right on this one, that they invaded a foreign country, and that
I never said anybody's. I never said.
Okay, you say pro-Ukraine like it's a bad thing.
Why do you assume that if someone opposes war that they somehow are a Russian agent, or how they're somehow?
No, I don't think that. I don't think that at all.
That's what you said. And that's very
No, I just think that if someone invaded my country, I would fight back, and that's what happened to Ukraine.
Why do you suppose that Russia went into Ukraine with 40,000 troops? I mean, 40,000 troops is not going to overthrow Ukraine.
Because Putin wanted the land, because he thought it would be easy, because he didn't think that Ukraine would be backed up, because he thought it was going to be easy pickings,
So
and it hasn't been.
You don't think anything of the 2014 coup, that insurrection? That in 2014, an insurrection took place in Ukraine. That was funded by the Obama administration and the CIA, and NATO, and is to blame for the Ukraine war. And unfortunately, Ukraine is experiencing an ethnic cleansing, and there aren't going to be any more Ukrainians to fight this war. And then what? You got Blackstone that are rolling into Ukraine. You got all these NGOs rolling in there.
So we have gone. I can tell you what we have happened here is that we've gone way off topic. But I think we disagree on more than we agree on. But I do respect you, Patrick, for at least trying to hear an alternate viewpoint. And you are welcome here to discuss, to debate, to do that, and I would respect your efforts to
so why do you
at least
support the Ukraine war and the military-industrial complex.
So we're way off topic because we're talking about the Trump indictments today, and it's interesting to me how I think staunch Trump supporters will try to point the finger at anything else rather than Trump got indicted. There's proof and there's evidence.
Hey, Kim, I think World War III, nuclear war, is much bigger than these indictments.
I think that the foundations of the United States government are worth protecting, and any other topic,
nuclear war.
I mean, any other topic that you want to bring up is at this point, because it's not the task at hand. It's, to me, you're pointing the finger somewhere else, that you're directing the conversation away from the fact that a sitting president of the United States tried to overthrow our system of democracy. And I'm not going to go for that. I mean, if on a day we're talking about Ukraine and Russia, please come back and talk about that.
Okay. So what if Trump is right? What if there was election fraud?
That was there were multiple court cases. In every single case,
Kim,
it was shown that it was not to be true.
Hey, Kim, how many of those court cases actually saw the evidence? Any of them?
No.
Any of them?
So you have a lot of questions, but see, I believe in our court system. I believe in our political system. I believe in
so how many?
I believe in the court of law. So I have to assume that if all these cases were brought in all these different states and none of them showed any evidence of there being election fraud, then I buy it.
Kim, hear me out. Every single one of those court cases that y'all always refer to that there was no evidence and they threw the court case out. They threw the court case out because they didn't want to see the case. They thought there was no standing to see the evidence. So none of the evidence was even seen before the court. So
right. You know why? Because it was deemed so ridiculous that it wasn't even worthy of being heard.
The courts,
you can make a claim and it doesn't mean it holds any water. Before a trial, often there will be a hearing to look at the evidence and see if it even warrants a trial. And if it's so ridiculous that it gets kicked out, that means it was so there's not even any evidence at all there. I don't know.
Go back and do your research and see if any of these court cases saw all the evidence.
Yeah.
None of them saw the evidence.
See, I don't believe you, but it's been a very interesting peek into the mind of someone who is
not willing to look at the evidence. I mean, you're just regurgitating talking points from the mainstream media. You haven't even.
No, it isn't. So if anyone's going to look at the evidence, I think, Patrick, that it needs to be you. But I do appreciate you taking the time to. I do appreciate you taking the time to call in today. I have to say that, Patrick. And I do appreciate you being here and trying to look at different sides of an issue. But I also do believe that John is right. It is a perfect example of why it's impossible to talk to Trump supporters, because you throw up so much smoke that when you try to address anything they said, they change the topic and more whataboutism. I mean, you saw our winding path there. You know, we went from Trump to Hunter Biden. When I said we don't want to talk about Hunter Biden, we went to Ukraine, anything but the task at hand. And then, of course, I'm the one that needs to do more research, as if I don't do research for these shows every single day on a multitude of platforms. and sources. But okay. I see that you're so married to this alternative, thinking. You're so against mainstream media. But in doing that, you might be throwing out the truth. Because I can tell you, as a former member of the mainstream media, I didn't go to work every day thinking, how can I lie to the people? How can I make sure that everyone believes the talking points? Because I never saw a talking point. No one ever emailed me talking points. So I disagree with you, Patrick. I do. But I do thank you for calling, and I do thank you for being part of the conversation here. Eric writes of Patrick, Patrick's got questions, but not a lot of answers. Yeah. And Gordon, you write stop, peach time, peach. But again, I want to have dissenting views, and I want to talk about things, but I want to talk about things with people who are actually willing to have the conversation, and not just blatantly go from one topic to the next because you don't want to talk about Trump being indicted. I want someone like Patrick to read the indictment. I didn't ask him whether he believes in the Constitution, and I should have. Tony from San Antonio, what's up, Tony? Says, you said nothing to hear you out, Peach. You had, I'm punishing you. I'm sorry. I wanted to have the conversation. I thought maybe we could make some headway. I thought we could start from a place where we agree, find the place where we disagree, and really have an intelligent discussion about it. Right? Pie in the sky thinking. Yeah, Dave. You're totally right. It's been investigated. No widespread voter fraud. Trump's own hired company, Cyber Ninja, said there was no fraud. Over and over again. Multiple investigations, multiple court cases. There was no fraud. Yeah, Vilma says, Peach isn't loony, he's just misguided. Which is interesting because you would think that someone who tries to hear other sources wouldn't be so misguided. I don't know. I find it fascinating, though, when you talk to someone like that and you just hear this, I don't know if it's anger, but kind of this desperation as they kind of flounder around to different topics like that. Yeah, the time was up. I do agree. Sandy reminds me of John Rothman's, when the crazies would call in. Again, I don't want to say he's crazy. I just, I think maybe misguided is more like it. Elwin, knowing the show is crowdfunded for $2.99 and a super sticker. So appreciate you. Thank you so much. Rosie says, remember there were Trump appointed judges that threw them out. That's right. Always have the conversation. Yeah. And again, you're welcome to call too and talk about your thoughts. We have just under a half an hour of this morning show left before we flip over to Mark Thompson, which I hope you will do today. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the Mark Thompson Show, please do that. The Mark Thompson Show. You can find his website at themarkthompsonshow.com. Click through to the YouTube site and subscribe if you haven't done that. We're trying to grow that show and this one. So if you share this show or the website, thenikkimadoroshow.com, I'd really appreciate it. And while you're subscribing, please subscribe to theafterparty.live. You can find The After Party live here on YouTube as well. That's the show that comes after Mark Thompson. And by the end of it, you'll probably be tired of me. Mindy says I should have hung up. Well, I don't know, Mindy. I mean, if it's important for him to hear alternative points of view, then shouldn't we hear alternative points of view? Let's talk to Craig. Craig popping in for a little morning convo as well. What's up, Craig? Hi.
I'm trying to figure this thing out.
Oh, you got it. It's perfect. I see you're in the kitchen this morning.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you well now.
Awesome.
Yeah, listen, I like you guys when you're on the other station. I like you now. And I was surprised to get on so quick. But anyway, I agree. I understand hearing the other side and letting that gentleman talk. Yep. But at some point, it became nauseating and regurgitative, and
Yep.
I almost turned off, but because of you guys, I stayed on. So, but no, keep doing what you guys are doing. Hey, and another question I had is, how do we hear or listen to Jim Rothman?
Oh, John Rothman.
John
Okay.
Rothman, Jim.
Two ways. So Wednesdays, John Rothman is on the Mark Thompson Show.
Okay.
So you'll see him live today.
Okay.
You can go to themarkthompsonshow.com, or you can search on YouTube for the Mark Thompson Show.
Okay.
Search the Mark Thompson Show. The second way you can hear John Rothman is he has a podcast that he does every day. It's called Around the Political World.
Okay.
And you can type that in. The podcast will come up, and it's short. It's like a 10-minute. He gets up in the morning. He records his thoughts on politics, and you can hear that. That's every day. That's a podcast. So Wednesdays on the Mark Thompson Show, and then the podcast Around the Political World with John Rothman, and it has two ends. Rothman has two ends.
Right.
So that's how.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was writing it down. That's why I wasn't.
Okay, that's cool.
But I appreciate it. Hey, keep doing what you're doing.
I'm sorry that you felt nauseated. That was not my point. And I did get to the point too where I'm like, there's no place where we're going to agree. And so it becomes a situation where it's pointless. But Craig, I have to tell you, I'll never stop trying. I'll never stop trying to meet people at a place where we can agree and at least try to discuss it.
And I agree with that. But at some point, when you realize that you're being fed spoons of BS,
yeah,
the taste is not good, you don't keep eating it. Enough is enough. I tasted it. And so, but listen, I listen to a lot. Begrudgingly, I watch Fox and One just so I can see what's going on, but I can only take but so much of it. And I've turned off when Trump comes on. I turn it off because this is how he got there in the first place.
Yeah.
Too much free publicity.
Right.
Every time he opens his mouth or does something, the gaggle is all there and regurgitating the lies. So
yeah,
the one thing I would like Congress to do is to change the law so that politicians cannot willingly lie to the American people.
How do you do that though if the lie is couched as a belief? Right. Well, I believe I won the election despite, in the face of all the evidence, despite everything else, I believe it. So it must be true. How do you fight that?
I tell you how. Just like it's illegal, it's against the law to lie to the police. It should be against the law to lie to the American public. And I hear what you're saying about someone's thought. No one can get inside of anyone's head. But we all know. So your kid has crumbs all over their mouth and the cookie top jar is broken. And you say, did you eat the cookies? No, I didn't eat the cookies. You know the crumbs are on their face.
Yeah, the evidence is clear.
The evidence is clear. So no matter what the kid says, you know that they ate the cookie. They just didn't eat the rest of the crumbs that were on around their face.
But Daddy, I believe I didn't eat the cookie. So if I believe it, it must be so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe the moon is made of cheese. Let's forget about it.
So are you glad to see the indictments come down? Are they what you expected?
It's what we expected. I travel. I just came back from Canada. I've been to a lot of countries around the world. And when in 2017, I was on a cruise from South America, Buenos Aires, and people from Europe were saying to me, they knew I was American because of my accent. I had the accent, right?
Yeah.
What the F did you guys just do? Putting this idiot in. You know what I mean? So it's like the rest of the world just sitting back and laughing at us. Russia, China, North Korea, they say, and they talking about us, look at them. So, yeah.
What do we do with people like Patrick? What do we do with, I don't know if it's half of America. I'm going to call it 30% of America that support Trump, that really feel these things. We can't discount them. They're Americans too. Yeah. What do we do with them?
So this is my prediction. Trump is going to keep saying what he's been saying. If I lose, when you start out, if I lose, it's like going to a basketball game, a baseball game, a soccer game. If we lose, the referees are to blame.
Yeah.
But if I win, then everything's worked. It can't. Life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Life doesn't work that way. You have to let guys like Pete on, but sparingly. Don't give him as much time as you're giving me. Man, give him a couple of minutes, give him a couple of sentences, and say thank you. I appreciate your call, and move on to the next one.
Yep. I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, what a treat to meet you this morning.
Yes, it's my pleasure, my honor, and I'm surprised that I was able to go on and talk
Absolutely.
to you. Listen to you years now, I can see you face to face, and
wonderful.
You're as beautiful as your voice sounds.
Oh, you're so kind to
All
me.
right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for coming on.
Bye-bye.
What a treat to meet you guys. I love that part of it. And I miss that part of old KGO where we're able to talk to people and hear your thoughts and hear what you're thinking. So I might have a time for one more call. And I think, Craig, the reason you got on so quickly is because a lot of people are, they don't necessarily want to be on screen, but you saw Patrick use just the silhouette and not the picture of himself or the video. You can do that too. So I put it back into the chat, the link to the show. And so if you want to come and talk and share your opinion, please do. You're more than welcome to do that here. But I agree with Craig. At some point you get another spoonful of BS, it becomes too much. It's hard to control a conversation that's just going off the rails like that. But I still would think it's important. It's important to have that conversation. So, Vilma writing, Peach time, Peach. Patrick will support Trump no matter what. He probably just listens to Fox and no one else. He said no. As a matter of fact, do you recall? He said he called Fox the mainstream media. He said it's owned by the same people who own other channels, and so that's not what he believes. Okay. John Daly, hello. John John doesn't want to do a YouTube show. It's a serious undertaking that requires tech savvy. He's hired someone to help with a short audio only podcast. They're talking about Around the Political World with John Rothman. Yeah. It's a great podcast though, and people are really loving it. And there was one day that he didn't post something or something happened technically and it didn't come on and people were really upset, wondering if he had stopped doing it. He hasn't. Tony in San Antonio says, have to give it to Peach, though. He called in as soon as I put the link up and wasn't scared. That's true. That he wasn't trying to hide. I want to think he really wanted to have the discussion, that he really wanted to hear an alternative viewpoint. Says he watches often. So that's great. And again, I'm not going to turn anyone away for disagreeing with me. I will end the conversation, though, for whataboutism. I will, because I don't think it's pertinent, and I think it's a tactic that's used to take the focus and the spotlight off the real issue at hand. And the issue at hand is Trump was indicted for conspiracy against the United States of America. And how is anyone accused of such a crime innocent till proven guilty? But if proven guilty, or even the appearance of it, to me, makes you unworthy of serving or being elected as president of the United States. Conspiracy against the United States of America. I'm telling you. John Watson says Fox News is too mainstream for some people, I guess. That's true. But he never told me what his sources really are. I asked him. He didn't say. Yeah. And Vilma says, and this is what I asked him, where's the evidence against Biden? They keep saying it's coming. Well, so is Christmas. You're funny, Vilma. Phineas writes, it's a typical Trumpy trying to use fake news as evidence to bring out the tinfoil hat. Yeah. Oh, well, very interesting. Craig, thank you for calling and talking about things as well. I appreciate that. But let's go ahead and move on a little bit. Why don't we? To we talked about TK a little bit. I don't know if you want to go back to that there's not enough teachers in California, if not the country, major teacher shortage, that we don't have enough people to teach TK, which has been legally mandated that the schools teach. Also in the schools, though, The Los Angeles Unified School District is celebrating 10 years of something called restorative justice. But it's, after 10 years, they can't look at the progress and go, yep, it works. Glad we switched. Glad we're doing this. The Los Angeles Unified School District is celebrating the School Climate Bill of Rights. And what that did was it stopped suspensions for willful defiance and brought restorative justice practices into classrooms. And restorative justice practices are kind of more kind, right? So they won't expel you, but you'll sit in a room with the people that you harmed, or I don't know, if there's say there was a fight in the lunchroom, you would have to sit in the group of people that you punched, talk about why it hurt them, talk about how you could do things differently. So there's some learning going on there. Instead of just you hit someone, you're out. There's more of a learning, gentle, easy way to kind of ease you into being someone who behaves properly. They can't say, though, in the school district, whether or not restorative justice practices have led to lower incidents of behavioral issues in schools. I always feel like, as a parent, if someone punches my kid, then I want the kid to serve. I mean, do I want the child to learn? Yes. But do I also want the kid suspended and taken out of school so that my child doesn't have to go to school and feel unsafe? Yes, that's also true. So I kind of, I like the idea of restorative justice, but the reality, I think I veer over a little bit more toward punishment. I want there to be, is it wrong to want there to be learning and punishment at the same time? Because that's what I want. That's really what I want. The Writers Guild and the studios have agreed to talks 3 months after the strike began. So this is some movement here we're seeing. There was a statement made last night to the Writers Guild members saying the negotiating committee and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, which bargains on behalf of studios like Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Netflix even, and other streaming services, they reached out to negotiate. They've set up a meeting for Friday. What will they offer? Are they willing to share in some of the streaming profits? Are they willing to share in the streaming information even? That remains to be seen. But at least there's movement on this. Something else, and maybe there might just be enough time to talk about this. It's back in Sonoma County. So last year we talked about this thing at the Sonoma County Fair, this event. It's midget wrestling is what they call it. Midget wrestling warriors, I think they say. And there was a big backlash because, of what that means for little people and how it's derogatory and perpetuating a stereotype. Well, it's happening this year again. So it's a Sonoma County Fair event featuring professional wrestlers. Despite disability rights groups, despite calls to not hold it, Little People of America and the Marin Center for Independent Living sending a letter to the Sonoma County Fair Board saying, "Can't believe you're doing midget wrestling. This is wrong. Why are you doing this?" They're holding the event despite that, but they're calling it something else. Now, instead of calling it midget wrestling, they have decided to call it Little Wrestling Warriors or some such like that. I don't know. Take the word midget out of it. But it's still the same thing. It's still little people dressed up in suits going at each other for the amusement of people who are not little people. When you go to a midget wrestling event, I'm sorry for using the term, a little people wrestling event, are you going there to laugh at them? Are you going there because of their athletic prowess and to appreciate the wrestling? No, it's people of normal stature going to look at them as freaks, to point and say, haha, look at the little people. they're laughing. People are laughing at those on stage. And I don't think, you can argue, well, the little people get money, they're making a living. But I don't think you can justify an event like that when it's really just the whole point of it is ridicule. So that's what I have been thinking about that going on in the Sonoma County Fair, and not really heeding or listening to anyone who's saying you shouldn't do this, because I think maybe it brings in so much money that the shows are sold out and people want to go see this. Joseph writes, why can't little people wrestle if they want to? It's reverse discrimination. Because Joseph, they can wrestle if they want to, but I would argue that the reason that most people go see them isn't because they want to see the wrestling. It's because they want to point and laugh. And you could say, well, if the little people don't care if they're being laughed at as long as they get a good paycheck, who's hurt? But I think it kind of furthers, perpetuates this discrimination or this ridiculing of them in society. And I don't know why they would want to. And I don't know why we would want to be so ugly as to go and laugh at people like that. It just doesn't feel right. So that's where I land on it. But I see your point too. They should be able to do whatever they want. And I guess if there was no market for it, the shows wouldn't be sold out. So there's another comment from SF Tesla. Need to go after the dictionary itself. Delete words like midget. We don't need that old word. We need to make room for newer words like woke. I think you get a lot of pushback on that. Jennifer writes, if all are adults and that's your thing, great, but you won't find me there. You won't find me there either. Maybe before I realized that it was all a bunch of, people of normal height standing around pointing and laughing at little people hurling themselves at each other. Before I knew better, then maybe, but now it just seems so mean-spirited. Katie has never heard of this event. When it's held at a county fair, it takes on the suggestion of a sideshow. Yeah, it totally does. I don't think it's right. I don't think the county fair should get behind such a thing. But again, Joseph, I do agree that if they want to wrestle, they should be able to wrestle. I'm just sad that there's a market for that. SF Tesla says there should be some word authority akin to SCOTUS to decide and rule which words we are permitted to speak. Well, that goes against freedom of speech there, doesn't it, my friend? Phineas says, how much do you want to... Oh, yeah, I don't know. We're talking about Patrick again. Perry Joe Jimbo, let them wrestle. People watch and laugh at regular size wrestlers. I watch neither. So you don't think it's specifically because they're little people? You think that it's wrestling in general that is the spectacle? Then what is it about little people doing it that brings a sold out show to the Sonoma County Fairgrounds? I just wonder. Kim writes, sell the tickets and wrestle at the Mystic Theater as well. Yeah, they do. And there's a market for it. So, yeah, so I just feel like this whole little people wrestling warriors, it's time to put that to bed. I think that as a society we should move beyond it. So I don't know. I'm surprised the Sonoma County Fair, after all the backlash that they had last year, is willing to take this on again. Did you hear about what Taylor Swift did? She had this major concert, we've talked about it, that pulled in more than $1 billion. And there are truckers that go from place to place and drive her equipment across the country. She gave all the truckers, the Taylor Swift truckers for the Eras Tour, $100,000 bonuses. What a nice thing to do. She says she's sharing the wealth from her wildly successful tour, handing out bonus checks right before the show Saturday night in Santa Clara. She said, or TMZ is reporting that the folks getting the money are production truck drivers who haul Taylor's equipment for the Eras tour. There's about 50 of them for her US tour, which means she just gave out $5 million. Now, we don't know what the other bonuses are, but apparently she gave big bonuses to the rest of her staff for the tour as well. Band members, dancers, lighting, sound techs, caterers. It is unclear exactly how much she paid out to all those people, but Saturday night was bonus night. She is wrapping up her US tour with the stop in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium. I think she has 4 shows. And again, as we mentioned in the news earlier, she is being asked to cancel those shows or at least postpone them because of a hotel strike. The problem with that is I think she knows that most people that come to see her, or many people, have booked hotel rooms, have made travel plans, have made flight arrangements. And so if you cancel a tour like that, you affect so many of your fans who are then out the money that they paid for plane tickets or, whatever to come to see you. I don't think she'll disappoint people in that way, even though the Lieutenant Governor of California, Eleni Kounalakis, is now one of many officials calling for Taylor Swift to postpone her Los Angeles tour dates. I don't see her doing that, though. But what a nice thing to do. $100,000 bonuses for her truck drivers. Really nice. I like it when people who are raking in the money share the money. Very kind. And speaking of sharing the money, boy, do I have a lot of people to thank today. This show is crowdfunded, so we really appreciate any support we can give. And for me, or you can give, and for me, that means not only participating in the chat and the conversation, which you do and which I love, because I do read the chats and I do have that conversation with you, but also contributing to the show financially if and when you can. And I know not everyone can, but Jo Fong can and does, and she did today for a $20 contribution, and we are so grateful. Also supports the show as a Patreon or PayPal member too. So Jo Fong, your support of the show means the world, and thank you. Elwin slaps down a $3 super sticker today. Elwin, thank you. And as Mark says, you do have the coolest name, Elwin. James Buchanan also for a $3 super sticker today. Very grateful. Thank you so much for that. Hula Steph, thank you. Hooray for you too, Hula Steph. Thank you for the contribution to the show. And Deidre from Lozica Concrete with a $10 super sticker. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate your contributions to the show, supporting the show in other ways as well. You're really kind. And Mike and Napa, participating in the chat today and also coming in with a $10 super sticker saying if Trump is reelected, civil war is on the way from their side. Ooh, I hope you're wrong. I mean, I would like to see a trial, a conviction, and have that be the end of it. But that's scary to think about, isn't it, Mike? Thank you for being part of the show today and for your contribution. A $5 super sticker from Marilyn. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate Marilyn Gunning, your contribution to the show. And Luis coming in with a $5 super sticker saying it was fearless radio, Kim. It was like old KGO bit, wasn't it? Thanks to Peach for keeping things civil. I would agree. John Rothman, aka the next San Francisco mayor, would be proud of your effort. Let's hope that you're right about that. I always like when he's proud. So I'm glad you enjoyed that. I have to say, even though, as Craig said, I was fed a spoonful after spoonful of BS, I still enjoyed the attempt at a conversation. Not that it was successful, Luis, but at least we tried to understand each other in some way, or I tried to understand him in some way. And thank you for the contribution. And lastly, Ferg's Tube with a $10 super sticker. Thank you guys so much for contributing to the show today. I can't wait for Nikki to see that you guys stepped up for us, and we really appreciate it. Nikki will be back tomorrow. Of course, with the show being crowdfunded, we have bills to pay, so she did have to take another job as well. But I would urge you to please share the show where you can. Help us grow beyond our 4,000 subscribers. We need to do that in order for us to make this a successful endeavor. But I consider it successful every day that I get to come on here and talk with you. So, oh, and another one from Luis. Look at that, Luis. Oh, thank you. That was the same one. That's okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything. So I appreciate everything that you guys have done for us. And I hope that you will join me next on The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show. Just Google it and join us there, because that show is about ready to start. So I will end the Nikki Maduro Show as we always do with my son. This is Jacob to sing us out. Thanks for being here today, you guys.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're sprout like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow.